Okay. Hey, folks. We're going to let a few more people show up, but George is going to talk to you guys about hornets and then also some good books about nature and different other natural type things. Some books that he's enjoyed over the years. So, yeah. If you guys have questions, I'll try to get them answered for you. Again, I'm CJ. This is George, our resident entomologist, amateur entomologist, hobby entomologist. All right, George, when you're ready, there's 50 people in.
Morning. I guess everybody, or a lot of people right now have heard about the hornet coming over from Japan. You know, the killer hornet, we're all going to die. And we've had this before with the Africanized honeybee. There were a lot of people, I'm sure when that started moving north from South America, they were sure by now Texas would be depopulated. That didn't happen either. So the latest thing now is a giant hornet that's coming in from Japan and Asia. The queens can get up to 2 inches long. That means it can get up to 2. They're not all going to be 2 inches long. We've got a cicada killer that lives right here in Missouri. These are 1.25 inches to 1 3/8 inches long. So there's a comparison of what we have in Missouri, what a 2-inch queen would look like from Asia. And I started tracking down the original report. First report was 1 or 2 dead ones, and then somebody supposedly found a nest in northern Canada, just north of the border around Seattle, Washington area. So they're not everywhere yet, and they're not telling everybody to move out of those states. The hornets are social insects. They build nests and cooperate to have a large nest. The queens are the only ones that survive the winter. What they'll do when spring gets here, they'll find a good place to start a nest. And they'll start a little honeycomb hive, like the paper wasp picture. I don't know if you can see a picture inside there. Nice little honeycomb with the same shape of the beehive. So they'll start a little comb maybe with 5 or 6 cells, raise those for to start by themselves, and then they'll have helpers, and the nest expands from there. The little comb starts expanding. They keep covering it with more and more chewed up paper, and as it gets larger and larger, it gets to the point where then they keep adding big plate-size combs one below the other, and keep expanding the cover. The openings are invariably in the bottom of the nest. This is the black and white bald-face hornet, right there. So they always nest above ground, usually somehow attached to trees. They could be 2 or 3 foot off the ground or 30 foot off the ground. It's very hit and miss. The one that everybody usually runs into and has experience with is a yellow jacket. In the fall, they'll start chewing up, trying to get in a can of soda if you're drinking soda, or chewing on some little hamburger meat at the barbecue grill. They're also a social wasp, and they live underground. So that's why everybody finds them. They run the lawnmower over the top of a nest. They get a little upset and start chasing the guy with the lawnmower. But you can sit there and watch them, you know, this far away from them, they don't bother you. If you don't start attacking the nest, they're not going to give you any trouble. They're actually pretty good insects to have around. A lot of their food is things like caterpillars. So they keep all the caterpillars from just, defoliating trees and everything around us. So they're not that bad of insect. Whether the Japanese hornet's going to really expand, remains to be seen. It's just kind of hit and miss. The cicada killers. A lot of times you see this swarming around like a bare piece of ground on the ball field or something. Cicada killers are nesting in the ground in a little dirt tunnel that they dig. And they actually will find and kill a large cicada, that is larger than they are. I should grab one right. So, you know, the big black and green cicadas you see around every year? They're literally larger than cicada killers, so they'll sting it, paralyze it, and either drag it through the brush and grass, or they'll drag it up in a tree and kind of slowly glide back to their nest because it's hard to take off of something that big. They'll bury it in the ground with an egg laid against it, and that's how they reproduce. They do not feed their young, except provisioning a nest. The hornets that make the bald-faced hornet nests and the yellow jackets, they have to feed their young literally every day. So the hunters and the helpers going out, finding things, bringing it back, chewing it up a little bit, and feeding the little maggots or larvae one at a time with this food source. So they're one of the few insects that really give that kind of individual care to their young. Most of them just lay an egg somewhere on a plant, or they lay an egg where they're provisioned a nest of something. But these yellow jackets and hornets actually daily take care of their young.
Hey George, we have a question.
Yeah.
Jenny asks, can you explain the difference in size again between the cicada killer and the Japanese Asian hornet?
I picked out a couple of large ones I've got here. They're about, the ones I have are 1.25 inches, 1 3/8 long.
So Jenny, if you see those calipers, the caliper is about 2 inches. 2 inches is about the size of the Asian hornet. So you can see these native Missouri cicada killers are just about a 1/2 inch smaller than the Asian one, Asian hornet.
Another social wasp we have in Missouri are the paper wasp. They'll make a little honeycomb, just the same size and shape of these. Once again, they start off as queens are the only ones that survive the winter. They'll start in spring making their little paper nest. Theirs are not covered up like this. They just hang down like a little umbrella with the cells inside. And once the queen gets a few helpers, then they keep expanding the nest. They will always leave a few guards, I guess we call them, on the nest when they're out foraging and getting food for the babies. So they'll stay around the nest with a couple all the time there. And the ones that are bringing food back, sometimes they'll feed the adults there. They've decided, somewhere along the line, evolution decided it'd be handy to have some guards at the nest, prevent anything from tearing it up and eating the grubs. Because a lot of them are totally helpless. They're a little white grub, they hang upside down in this honeycomb. And while we're talking about honeycombs, a lot of people see these hornets' nests, and they'll call them beehives. Bees usually nest in a hollow tree cavity or something. They don't make a paper nest to protect the nest. But they all use the same design for their nest. That honeycomb, it's the most efficient way to get a large number of things into space, and it's also a stronger comb because of all the connections between the adjoining cells. Now, we used to get soda and beer bottles in a case, it'd be 24 in a case. They'd always have a square grid of dividers to keep the bottles from breaking. If they wanted to get more in a case and make them even safer, they'd use this pattern, but this is really difficult to make. So they went for efficiency and simplicity and went with the square thing. But if you want to make something really strong, get as much into one space you can, this is a pattern that they showed us that. You know, we didn't have to have an engineer design that and come up with a efficient. There are other wasps that are solitary wasps. They're wasps that'll make a nest in the ground. They'll provision that nest and then cover it up with dirt, and that's the last they see of it. They'll put anything from spiders, different kinds of leaf hoppers, there's a lot of different. They'll provision their nest, close up, and that's the end of it. Some nest in the ground. Others will find some kind of excuse me.
Yeah, take your time, George.
A little more. There's a couple in Missouri, 2 different kinds of mud dauber wasp. One makes a long, like a pipe stem of dirt, and provisions that with different spiders and things, and seals it up. And another one makes kind of like a big blob, looks like a big blob of mud thrown up there, but they're still individual little cells. Each cell has 1 egg laid in it, and its provision with whatever food that particular wasp uses. And the guys that really get into studying the mud dauber wasps and things like that, they also get pretty good at identifying spiders, because a lot of the wasps are very specific about what kind of spider they will provision their nest with. One even likes to use black widow spiders. So, in that sense, they're helping us out. Some people don't like spiders very much. Very few people like spiders. But they're pretty amazing creatures. That's probably about it for the wasp and stuff and hornets.
Before George puts any of the hornets away, and we start moving on to some books that he would like to recommend to our fans of City Museum, does anybody have any questions? We're here to answer your questions if you have them.
If I can.
Yeah. Also, it seems like some trolls have showed up into our comments, so just ignore them, guys. Trolls being trolls. Don't you worry about them. All right, well, we're going to continue on to books. George has some good book recommendations if there's any current or future naturalists out there that would like to get into entomology or just learn more about the natural world.
Or history buffs.
Or history buffs.
These are a little bit of history and natural history. When Peter the Great became the Tsar of Russia, he was determined to bring Russia into at that time, the modern age. Russia was a very backward country. It was being preyed upon a lot by European armies and powers that were stronger than it because it didn't have a good system of organization when it came to armies, for example. So Peter the Great was going to bring them into the modern world. He actually went to another country, signed up as a carpenter's apprentice, so he could learn shipbuilding and bring that knowledge back to Russia, so Russia could start developing a navy. He developed an Academy of Science, start promoting the interest in science and knowledge. And one of the projects that they sponsored was to send Bering up to the Alaskan, Siberian area of those two countries. At that time, in the 1725, they didn't know if America and Russia were connected or if there was a strait between the two countries. Even though a Russian had found that strait 60 years before. There weren't any good publishing houses around. There was no internet, so he found the strait. He knew it was a strait, but nobody got the word out to anywhere. So that had always been a subject of a lot of confusion. Peter the Great decided he's going to send an expedition out there and they're going to get that settled once and for all. So they're in St. Petersburg. Instead of having the capital in Moscow, he built a new capital for Russia. He wanted in St. Petersburg because it was closer to Europe. Had to go from St. Petersburg all the way across Siberia to the east border of Siberia. They brought carpenters with them. When they got there, they had to build some ships. It was like 3 years before they got all the men, all the equipment out there, all the supplies they needed, and got the ships built and finally set them in the water. And I think the first year the ships were built, it was too late in the season to do anything, so they sat tight. They went out, and for all that work, all that labor, Bering was a little, maybe a little too cautious. He spent a little time discovering and exploring, but he didn't really definitively find out if there was a strait or not. He guessed there was, and gave up. So all this time and effort, and of course back in the 1700s, people had no idea why people died of scurvy. But numerous men were lost between scurvy, starvation, the weather. It was a pretty tough life being an explorer back then. So he got back to St. Petersburg, gave his report, and for 200 years after that, people were still trying to decide, did he really prove that there was or wasn't? There's two different schools of thought, and something that I guess they can argue about forever. But it's in a couple of years after that, since it wasn't really nailed down clearly enough, they decided to send another expedition. So this expedition was gone for 5 years. By the time they got back to St. Petersburg, Peter the Great had died. So the Tsarina, a woman running Russia at the time, she took the report, and of course, one thing I forgot to mention, Bering was not a Russian. He was a Dane. back in the early days of exploring, scientific discoveries, natural history, explorations and trips, a lot of naturalists, even military leaders, they would hire themselves out to different countries. Peter the Great especially wanted to build up his country. He had a lot of European advisors training his armies. And Bering was from Denmark, so he was hired to go and get this project started. And that's how he got in on the Russian expedition. A couple years later, after he got back, they sent another expedition out, also run by Bering. This time they took a guy named Steller with them. I don't know if anybody's heard of Steller's sea cow. It's a manatee that lived up in the Alaskan, Siberian, Bering Sea and everything, up north in the Arctic Ocean. So this guy was a physician to the expedition and a naturalist. The second expedition was, I would say, in my judgment, just as tentative and cautious as the first one. Steller wanted to get out. Every time he saw land, he wanted to be on that island and find out what was there. He wanted to collect. He wanted to see a world that no one had ever seen before in Russia or Europe. And he could very seldom get on an island to do an exploring. But when he did get the chance, he made the most of his time. For the limited limited opportunities he had to get on that island, he did some fantastic collecting, made some, like the Steller sea cow, it's a northern manatee type thing. He's the only scientist that ever described the thing while it was alive. Before any other European naturalists ever got to that area of the world, it was extinct. So he's the only guy to even describe the thing. There's different things named after him. He lived through the second expedition, but toward the end of it, Bering died. Scurvy and general sickness. He ended up dying and never got back on the second, from the second expedition. Steller made it back. He didn't get his collections into St. Petersburg. There was a lot of, you just couldn't put anything on the train and send it home. There were no trains, there was nothing. Just the fact that it took 3 years to get the expedition started shows you how difficult it was to travel hundreds and hundreds of miles to bring supplies back and forth. So when he got home, he was writing up his reports. By the time shortly after he got back, all of a sudden the otter pelts, they discovered there were sea otters up there, and the pelts were the most wonderful fur anyone had ever seen. So within a year, the ships were up there killing sea otters as fast as they could, and virtually enslaving the native population up there to get sea otters for them. Steller started speaking out against that to the different Russian governors, and one got so aggravated they ordered an arrest warrant for him because they said he was causing, treason and whatever. So he didn't want to go back to St. Petersburg with that hanging over his head. He met up with another governor up there, explained what was going on. This guy said, okay, you're good. He gave him full pardon and he went on his way. Then somebody ran into him at the bad time. Now he's under arrest again. So they finally got settled. And while all this is going on, Steller gets a note from his wife back in St. Petersburg, I believe. She's complaining that her money that she's getting from his salary or whatever for the trip is not enough to live the lifestyle she'd like. So here he is, he's trying to get back home, he's just great to see, and she sends him this letter. And the worst part about the letter is she tells, by the way, I'm so short on money. I sold your collection of natural history books. This library is gone. So he starts drinking a little bit, he's a little depressed. He said, well, I got to get home, maybe I can patch things up. On the way home, he gets sick, and the guy that's getting home on a sled, he couldn't wake him up one night, so he left him outside in the sled, covered him up with some blankets. So within a day of that, Steller's dead. 37 years old, wonderful naturalist, brilliant man, hard worker, and what has happened so often with these kinds of adventures and travels, it's really a tragic end. It's a terrible life out there. How those guys ever did it, I'll never know. Most people now, if their internet goes out, they're afraid to,
They definitely dealt with some hardships.
Yeah.
They definitely knew what it was to live a hard life.
Oh, yeah. they don't make people like that anymore. Those are two good books. This one's a little dry reading, but this one's fantastic.
So again, the Red Book. Bering Search for the Strait. That was the first part of George's talk on Bering. The second book George was talking about is Where the Sea Breaks Its Back. It's about George Steller. And then George has a third one for you guys.
This is one thing I grabbed at the last day of a book fair somewhere. This guy wrote about 25 different articles. There's all kinds of things relating to science. How life began, the size of the atom and all the things that make up an atom. Talking about the possibility of an asteroid destroying the planet. The structure of the atom. He talks about Einstein's genius and what his theories were. We just talk about the different fossils and how rare it is for something to get fossilized. I mean, the odds of something happening like that are just infinitesimal. It talks about
It's like hitting the lottery.
Yeah, extinction events over the history of Earth, how close everything, all life came to being wiped out. They talk about the ice ages. So every article in it is just fantastic. So much to the point, I wanted to find out where this guy lives so I could call him up and say, hey, this is a wonderful book. I enjoyed reading it. There wasn't a single chapter that I didn't like. And I'd recommend that one anyway. I actually loaned it to someone. I had to get it back so I could talk about it today. It's a great story. And on a related issue, this is called the Great Moments in the Lives of Outstanding Naturalists. This guy named John Terry wanted to write a book about natural history, so he sent 40 letters out to naturalists in all different countries around the world, asking if they'd write a little little chapter on what they thought was one of the most enjoyable, important moments of their life when related to natural history. So the one I picked out specifically today, this is a guy named Dan Eckleberry. In 1944, he went down to Louisiana, and he wanted to find out where if it was possible to see a ivory-billed woodpecker. Most people, there was a big tract of land called the Singer Tract. Back when Singer sewing machine was really big, every sewing machine had a wooden cabinet. And Singer wanted to make sure that they had a supply of lumber to make sewing machines forever. They bought this huge acreage down in Louisiana, and that was always a big stronghold of the ivory-billed woodpecker. But over the years, they started cutting in there, and everybody tried to save the tractor. Had plans for this and that, but through one disaster after another, it didn't happen. They cut the whole tract down. Down in 1944, the ivory-bills were getting harder and harder to find. So Eckleberry talked to somebody and said, why don't you go down and see this guy, tell him what you want. So they went out and they walked around in swampy areas and walked and walked. Finally they get back to this tree, and the guy said, there's a nest tree there. So they sat there and sat there. It's getting dark, everything. He's just about to give up. He looks over at the guy and like, what's happening? Should we go home? No, just wait. So all of a sudden here comes a female ivory-billed woodpecker. That, to this guy, that was just one of the greatest moments of his life. So few people have ever seen one that are alive today, and now they're all gone.
And so the title of the book is?
So this is
Discovery?
Yeah, Great Moments in the Lives of, I got two people shaking.
I know.
It's by John K. Terrace, Terres. Once again, why don't I give you my phone number? It's 486-3136. If anyone wants to get a little more detail, who wrote the book, the author's names, etc., etc. Got some questions about insects, call me. But it's just amazing. And of the 40 people that he wrote letters to, 36 of them came back and wrote a chapter for him. He thought that was a fantastic rate of return. Because a lot of these guys have been, before that didn't, they were either big projects going on, or they were going on field trips. But most of these stories are just really nice.
You have anything else, George? We'll go ahead and wrap this up.
Okay.
if you want.
One last thing.
One last one,
The Coming Plague.
which is pretty topical.
Yeah, I couldn't pick a better book to talk about this time and age. This was written, I think, back in 1996. Talks about all kinds of different fevers, illnesses, plagues, whatever. And it's a very prophetic book. I hope everybody listens to this. It's surprising something like this hasn't happened before, and if we don't maybe change our ways, it's going to happen again. One reason I tried to talk about books today was a couple weeks ago I was flipping through the channels, I get home and I'm too lazy to do something else, so I'm looking on all the channels. And all of a sudden I look and there's this guy sitting there watching television, and there's a TV show about people watching television. That was a scary moment. I was like, really? It's come down to this? There are a lot of great books out there to read. Natural history, all kinds of science, discovery, coffee table books.
So again, if we've got anybody watching out there with kids at home that are really into nature or anything, outside, or would like to have access to some really neat books that George has on hand.
Or if the kids want some jars for collecting.
Just let us know and we can help you out. We can get you jars for collecting. We can get you books. We can let you borrow. We can point you in the right direction. Anyway, me and George, we're here if you guys ever want to talk about cool stuff outside.
Yeah, I could go on about books for hours.
Anyway, everybody have a great day. Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Yep, and hope everyone's doing well, staying safe, and we will see everyone soon.